Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Shop Talk, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. And with us tonight for Shop Talk, I am blasting out this microphone. Let me fix that real quick while we say hello to first Mala and then Mike. So let's start with Mala. Hello, Mala. And we also have Mike. All right. So Shop Talk is, as I mentioned, hosted by the Triangle Area SQL Server Users Group. This is our chance to kind of get together on a Monday after work and kick back, talk about some tech topics, have a few ideas, and get a little bit of chat derailment in the process. So along the way, I need to fix my microphone settings here. And while I do that, big news is that we do have our SQL Saturday. It is up and running. And I think while I drop a link to SQL Saturday Raleigh, which by the way is free, you can sign up for free. You can also pay it's like $17.85 for lunch. And there is a pre-con as well. So how about I drop that link in chat? And Mala, if you want to talk about SQL Saturday for just a little bit while I get my microphone all set up so that I don't blow out anybody's eardrums again.
He has agreed to come in and teach a class the day before. Um, from what I heard from him, which is, oh, he says he can't hear me at all. Okay.
Yeah, you're good now, Mala. I fixed it.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Um, sorry, what was I saying? This is our first event in 5 years. We got lucky with the venue thanks to Mike. We didn't think that we would get a venue, and the schools and the places we were at before weren't willing to rent their premises. So, but thank you, Mike. We got a nice location for free. And then Brent Ozar is doing a pre-con the day before. He said he was interested in coming by when I met him at the Pass Summit. And it turns out things worked out, and he's coming to teach cloud databases and how to optimize stuff on databases. He's also going to be around for the SQL Saturday. Anyone who wants to network with him or hang with him, feel free. There's going to be plenty of time for that. Um, what else? We are accepting submissions right now. Submissions are rolling in, and sponsorship is also looking pretty good at this point. So we expect a great event this year, and we hope everybody will show up.
Yeah. So let me fill in fill in those details. Mala's done a great job of giving us the overview of SQL Saturday Raleigh. I'm even going to share a screen. Look at how fancy we're being right now. So SQL Saturday Raleigh dropped a link in chat. It is number 1111. If that is not fortuitous, I don't know what is. This will be May 17th. So that is a Saturday, middle of May. It'll be probably hot, but not overly hot. Sort of like my levels currently on the microphone, where it's hot but not overly hot because we have a limiter in place. And that limiter in our case is we're going inside. This is going to be hosted at Duke Health. It's at 14 Moore Drive. This is actually where Mike works. So if you ever want to go harass him at work, you probably can't get through the door because there's security. But hypothetically, this is where you could go harass him. Don't harass him though. That's not very nice. Unless it's for a joke, then in which case go for it. But as Mala mentioned, pre-con, Brent Ozar is doing faster, cheaper cloud databases. This is a full day training. There's a link here. Currently, you can get in for $149. By the end of this month, that number is going to go up to $199. It is a national holiday in Norway. Yeah, it's a National SQL Saturday Rally Day. It's a holiday that not many people knew about, but it's definitely there. So I'm not going to read all of this stuff. Basically, what I'm going to get at here is you should probably pay us money, and in return, we will give you neat things. For example, a full day of Brent Ozar training, or just a full day of time spent at Duke Health learning about all things data platform related. The call for speakers, like mentioned, is currently open, and I did drop a link to that in chat as well. So we're going to have our lineup. Call for speakers will be open until March 31st. On the 31st, that's your last chance to get in and try to speak for the event. We would love to have local speakers. So come on, drop a few session slot ideas in, and make a difficult choice for us. Make it tough for us to figure out who we want to speak. So if you do that, then you're making our life difficult, and we like that. That's the good kind of difficult, not the bad kind. So that's my pitch for SQL Saturday. This is why they will never let me do pitches again. All right. If there are any topics, let us know. We can find people as well. Yes, that's also an idea. And frankly, if it's a topic that you really really want, submit a session, figure it out. That's the best way to learn a topic is by being thrown into the deep on it. So that's topic number one. Actually, I don't know. Is there anything else we want to talk about regarding the SQL Saturday at this point, Mala, Mike?
Hmm, not
Uh,
really. That's what. The only two people I know in the chat are both speakers, Anders and Solomon. So I hope you guys will submit, and I hope we can hear you at the SQL Saturday. Uh,
Yeah, I was the more passive version of that, and Mala just went straight
yeah.
on with the Anders and Solomon submit or else. Um, you probably
and I'm going to send it around to Duke too. So we have a lot. We're doing that SQL Server conversion. So I'm going to see if some people are interested in talking about that because I think people will be interested in that. And
yeah,
then, I mean, this is kind of not a shop top topic, but I did get big training room. So those are confirmed.
excellent, excellent. So we have 4 rooms for our event for regular sessions, and technically we could probably squeeze a fifth, but we really don't want to. But the 4 rooms that we have are pretty nice. We went through, we saw them. They are kid tested, mother approved, and we're looking
Mhm.
forward to the event. So Anders says anti AI slash automation question mark PowerShell. I'm not sure if that's all one suggestion, like using Power
That was exactly my thought too. I was not sure how to respond to that.
and
So
anti AI actually would be a neat topic. That might be it would definitely be a more provocative topic, but I'm sure that somebody could put something together. The question would be how you would frame it in a data platform space. Like, I don't know, Copilot is not your friend, um, especially when other people are using Copilot. Which,
and especially when Microsoft is a sponsor. Just say,
yeah,
yeah.
Microsoft and AMD are a sponsor for the event. So, but that said, I don't care if somebody does put a session up that is here's why I don't like Copilot. We'll
Yeah, I'm
review it.
totally fine. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
they're not my real dad.
Uh-huh.
So
It's good.
okay,
Oh, I don't like it. I was using OneNote and it popped up. I was like, "What are you doing? Get out of here!"
yeah, M365 copilots have gone a little wild. They're trying to put copilots into everything, and
Right.
some of them are more baked than others. I'll phrase it that way.
What have you heard of SSMS Copilot, Kevin?
Very little, and yeah,
Mhm.
even if I did know details, I probably couldn't say it out loud. But I will say
Oh,
I
yeah. Uh-huh.
I have
Uh-huh.
relatively little interest in it. I mean, admittedly, I'm doing a lot less SQL Server work these days, um,
Mm-hmm.
given data science job and everything. But
Mm-hmm.
the SSMS Copilot might be interesting. Chat no longer shows on stream. Yeah, let me sort that out as
It says
well.
it's gonna.
Kevin's new setup, so there will be glitches
Yeah,
for
yeah,
sure.
and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I can get chat to show up. I probably don't want to fight it right now. Um, just because that may take me completely out of my thing.
Anything anything you guys want to know on the event, please feel free to post on chat. SQL Saturday related.
Yeah,
We,
yeah.
we will do our best to answer.
But Solomon, I will put down here a to do to fix chat before tomorrow night's meeting, because tomorrow night we do have our data science and business intelligence meeting. Let me pull up Meetup and I will drop a direct link in case there's anybody who has not yet signed up for AI powered trading systems leveraging data driven insights in financial markets. And that is from Sunny Guntuka, which I'm probably going to have to ask Sunny before the session tomorrow how I actually pronounce his name. Um, I think I've got the Sunny part correct, so I've got that going for me. That's at least 50% correct. And
Guntuka. Guntuka.
Guntuka.
Guntuka. Yes.
So I'm sure I'll mess it up tomorrow, but that's okay. That's kind of what I do.
Also, I think we plan to have a sequel clinic, right, Kevin?
There may or may not be a sequel clinic.
Uh-huh.
That is something that we'll have to check out. It may depend on space and availability of people and willingness and blah blah blah.
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
there's a possibility of a sequel clinic. There may
Hmm.
also be a possibility of Mark Wilkinson just wandering around yelling at people, saying, "Hey, hey, can I help you somehow? Hey, 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 hey." Which I would actually give Mark a stipend if he did that. It'd be a small stipend, mind you, because technically I think it would be considered graft. But or he'd just be a short term employee. He's just a
I
short
must
term
share
employee.
this when this recording goes out.
Listen, IRS. I'm not saying I did anything wrong. Okay. Um, all right. Anders has submitted. So now that that's happened, our Jerry Lewis style telethon, where we just have to keep talking about SQL Saturday and whatever topics come to our mind while we try to goad people into submitting sessions, that was totally successful. As long as Solomon also does submit something, but we'll see. Okay, enough of that. Enough of that. Let's talk about topic number two. Topic number two. This is something that Mike has had on this list for, I think it's been about a month and a half, which means it may or may not still be relevant. We'll find out together. Handling large exports for data science clients.
Still relevant.
Excellent. There we go. The relevancy, it's still here. We're just fine. But I think Mike, you have to explain it.
Sure. So I have a consistent issue where I use different tools. Um, I was using Azure Data Studio. I think I'm going to start using VS Code when it's a little bit more fully baked. And I use SSMS and I use dbeaver sometimes. So those are the main clients that I use, and maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe I need to be using other tools. But so the issue that comes up is I do work for AI Health and for people that do national language processing NLP, and then I also do work for people that do machine learning. And some of the data sets can be pretty extreme. So you know, even though so I might have like note, like let's say like a note ID or a unique key of some sort, and then a list of text, like a wall of text. So it could be from surgical notes or what have you, and it ends up being absolutely massive. So it could be like 5 GB, 8 GB. And I have tools like I have Glog. I don't know if you ever heard of that. It's kind of like a log explorer where you can open up large files. So, you try to open up one of those in Excel and it just explodes. So I'm always looking for better ways to do that because there's like a firewall system here. It's not like, I guess in a perfect world, one of the things that we do for incredibly large data sets is we give people access to the database and give them a Oracle account, and then we kind of show them how to connect to it, and then let them do what they want by by creating some custom tables that only they can see with security. But I'm going to start making these notes available to researchers so that they can get them themselves. There's performance stuff that is important to go through at some point, but yeah, the best thing I've come up with is JSON. Um, I was able to get the data out using JSON and not have as many issues with, sometimes there's, I tried it many different ways, and the CSV files are huge, and then sometimes the characters don't work correctly. Um, there'll be some sort of control character, or some non-Unicode character, stuff like that, or things will wrap because they kind of seem like a delimiter. So some of the programs I was using would delimit stuff, and I did not want it delimited because I can't QA like a 6 gigabyte file and go and fix something, right? So that was my general point, is like I have to routinely do stuff like this where I'm giving people 5 gigabyte, 10 gigabyte files. JSON has worked pretty well, but if there's better ways to do it, um, I can even try using Python and squishing it into Parquet file. It has to be stuff that my clients can use as well. So
Yeah.
that's my
Yeah. Okay. So if I want to summarize this up, fixed width, Anders with the fixed width format. I hate fixed width format, but it's an option. I mean, I personally would bias toward Parquet files uh, for a lot of exports. It is going to require more understanding of what's necessary for to get things going. But you need the right library, PyArrow in Python, or Arrow in R, or .NET library, or a Parquet viewer application. But it is a standard for this sort of data analysis. For people who are not that sophisticated, who don't analyze the data in Python or R, or don't have the appropriate viewer, and if you're looking at large data extracts, then you are probably going to be limited to delimited width files, or excuse me, fixed width or delimited files, and those those always have challenges, just in terms of using a delimiter that happens to be the same delimiter, like the character shows up in your
in
text
the
that you're trying to use as a
correct.
delimiter. Exporting via different tools in SQL Server is generally okay about that. It will quote the delimiter. It will quote the field so that you understand where that delimiter, when what fields use that delimiter. So it's not awful, but it is a little messy. And if we're talking about extracting larger amounts of data, I would generally not recommend using a client tool like Management Studio or Azure Data Studio, just because you'll have to first get that data into the tool, and that is fairly slow. The grid display does take a lot of memory and does take a fair amount of CPU to display everything. Azure Data Studio actually is better about large data sets than Management Studio, in my experience, and has the ability to save those as text files, as delimited files, or as JSON or Excel. So it does have that functionality, which is neat for small data sets. But when you're talking about gigabytes of data, it's not going to be work. It's not going to work out very well. So, um, if you were getting pretty serious about consistent extracts of data for customers, I would probably bias toward having Parquet files, writing some code in some programming language that really supports large data extraction and processing. That could be Python with Pandas data frames. It could be R with their data frames. It could be .NET, C Sharp, F Sharp, um, with ADO drivers and creating data sets off of that. A static language like C Sharp or like F Sharp will probably be more challenging for a generic solution because the ideal, especially in an object oriented language like C Sharp, the ideal is that you predefine what the shape of the record is and that it's able to check at compile time, is the shape of this record correct? But then that means for every separate data extract, you have your own separate objects, you have your own separate classes that you're creating, or you're using a data reader array, and um, that's okay, but is a little bit of a challenge to work with. This is actually where an advantage it comes in a dynamically typed language like R, like Python, where you can just get back your result set and write result set to disk, not having to worry so much about the
checking
exact
the data type.
shape. Yeah, the exact shape of the data.
Okay,
Now,
great. And well, now ours is intriguing because that's what most of my clients use.
mhm.
Um, and they use other things too. I'm sure some of those people are using TensorFlow or other things like that. But yeah, R and Python would be good. And I have some basic skills in that, so I could start working on something.
Yeah, and so this is generally a pretty solid option. With R, there isn't the arrow package, and the arrow package will allow you to read and write Parquet files. So Anders mentions, by the way, 6 seats left for the pre-con. That's at the initial pricing, the early bird pricing. After that, there will be plenty more seats for the pre-con, but they're up at $199 per person. We could technically fit about 120 people in the pre-con room. If we get 100 people in that pre-con room, it's not going to happen. It would be insane. But I do appreciate the sense of scarcity. There are only 6 tickets left, so you better buy them now, everybody. And then when more tickets come by, there's only 6 more tickets left. So we should do that.
All
We
right, so
should,
you're saying the pre-con is in the auditorium?
yeah.
Because I thought you wanted me to book the treehouse.
We've got both. Wait, was it the treehouse that you booked?
I did book the
Okay,
treehouse.
we'll talk about it afterwards.
Auditorium. Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll get into it because I don't know. I don't know about the auditorium on
Yeah.
that day. I gotta
Now I remember. I remember the discussion.
work.
So good job with the marketing, Anders. Great job there. As long as there is beer. This is not Germany, so you know can't tell you that we can do
That's
that.
a site. That's not even a Duke thing. That's an RTP thing. Alexandria Park doesn't allow it.
Yeah. So that means you'll have to like sneak it in like you're back in high school. Please nobody tell any place that I even joked about that. Don't do that. Where
I don't
that
even know what
is
you mean.
like any of the things that we've talked about tonight, except for signing up for SQL Saturday, which you should do. Okay. So for now, just imagine there are still plenty of seats available. Because there are still plenty of seats available. Exactly how many? Only the fire marshal can stop us. That's all I'm saying. So we're gonna pack you in like sardines, and you'll enjoy it. You will enjoy it very much. I would say, or else you get your money back. Except no, that's not happening. Um, okay. So yeah, as far as it goes when it comes to large large data export, that's probably the initial advice that I would have. Working inside of R, I definitely recommend the Arrow package. And actually, I can see if I can drop the CRAN link for Arrow because it's easy. It's an easy package to get in R. So there we go. This is the CRAN link for Arrow. It does require a few other things. It is kind of built in the tidyverse. So it does use per, it does require tidy select, it does require C++, the
Ooh,
C++ library, because it is technically a C++ library, but one of the neat things about it is that this is how you get access to Parquet. Arguably it's not the only way to get access to Parquet, but it is a cross-platform library for uh, fast data interchange. So actually, let me share the screen. Let's talk about Apache Arrow for just a little bit. This is something that came out of the Hadoop renaissance, or the the broader Hadoop experience, and has lived on well beyond Hadoop. So this is, I'll drop the link in here. Arrow.apache.org is the URL in case you're following along at home. And this will give you some idea of what's available. There are libraries for about a dozen languages. So it's not just Python and R. There is a .NET library for this. You can get it for other languages as well. And basically, the general idea, let me just drop the FAQ, is handling in-memory columnar data, which, as we know, Parquet is an example of uh, column style storage in file format. And this is a way of reading that data in memory. So if I go here, Parquet is not the runtime format. Parquet is the storage format. But Arrow has the capability to give you the ability to read Parquet files. And that's why they're commonly used together in applications. And so that's, stop sharing. That is going to be a general recommendation. Now, in situations where the customer or the client is not using a language that has support for Arrow, which there aren't that many languages that people are using that have no support for Arrow, as we saw. I mean, it does handle Java, .NET, Python, Ruby, R, Julia, even, and
no, Erlang, get out of here.
yeah. So if everybody's using Erlang, or maybe Haskell, um, or Pascal, so
Scala.
you might have some trouble there. But I was gonna say you could always extract that data, and in the event that you do need to do this kind of a data extraction, I mean, this is what SQL Server Integration Services was designed for. I'm not the biggest fan of SSIS. SSIS hasn't really improved since 2012. There were some changes in SQL Server 2016, but frankly, a lot of those changes were uh, adding stuff that no longer is relevant or that never really worked. And so I mean, it just hasn't changed lately. So basically, grab a book from SQL Server 2020 or from 2012, and get
It's
an
not much
emulator
difference.
book on SSIS, and you're good to go there. The stuff hasn't
Yeah,
changed. It's yeah,
we're going to be using SQL Agent, I think.
yeah. A SQL agent job to run a SQL query, write it out to disk. That can work. I mean, I could also see writing a PowerShell commandlet and even running it from SQL agent. SQL Agent is just a scheduling tool. You can schedule the run of a SQL Server Integration Services package, or of a PowerShell job, or of just a straight up SQL script, and all it's doing is scheduling the execution of whatever task. SQL Agent and BCP. I don't like BCP that much. I have not had great success with it. The file format has always been a pain in the neck for me. Some of this, I'm sure, is that I didn't use it very much. So the few times when I've had to use it, I've struggled with it. But anything that's more complex than write out a few columns just gets weird. So I don't know. I never liked it very much. But admittedly, it is still an option. And technically, that was the original way of SQL Server bulk copying data in or out of SQL Server. Maybe not the original way, but an original way. Format files are your friend. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Those were the things that gave me the most pain. Getting the format file quite right, and then the error message would be completely indecipherable to my brain. Easy peasy. I don't know. I mean, again, this could be something where I just never had enough experience doing it, so it never clicked for me. But the few times I've tried it, it has not been great. I remember one time it did work really well, and that was a simple data set. But anything that was even mildly complex in terms of data types or data structure, I had problems back in my day. Yeah, yeah. I'm just saying there are better ways to do it. Integration services is probably not a better way to do it, but it at least allows you to drag and drop more and can work reasonably well for one-time operations. Management Studio does have the ability to do import export of data, essentially writing an ad hoc integration services job to execute. So, that's a possibility. But if you want something that's scheduled, that's running on a regular basis, then BCP, like Andrews mentions, is an option. Running integration services packages is an option, and I would still, yeah, running a PowerShell job that executes the SQL query, takes the results, and writes it out to whatever format file or whatever format you want. All of those are solid options. The bigger pain point is just going to be making sure that the query you're writing has reasonable indexing, that you're not going to burn too many resources in trying to sort out whatever you've got to do with it, and that uh, the results are reasonably okay, because it's really hard to troubleshoot. Like you mentioned, it's really hard to troubleshoot large data sets. So anything that you can do to simplify that task would be helpful, but it can be a challenge. You can even use the import export wizard and save it as an SSIS package. That's true. So you can save that. You can do it one time on your own and then save it as an integration services package to rerun again later. So that's kind of a combination of two of the things that I mentioned. So, Mike, on a scale from 1 to helpful, that's probably a 3, right?
No, no, this is very helpful. I think it's very helpful because it's going to keep coming up, and we're gonna. Most of my clients use R, so it makes sense to use R and Arrow, and then have a process where I could actually write a script that kind of. So we're using the ODBC connection, um, and I haven't investigated if there's a better connection to SQL Server or not, but I've been able to get it to work for Oracle on SQL Server. So I would connect to it. I have a script that works for me, but I want it to work in R, and then figure out a way to have a process in Arrow where I could actually put that in a Git instance that we have. It's all in a protected environment, but the interesting thing about the protected environment for personal health information is that there's not really shared spaces. Like you have your own virtual machine, I have my own virtual machine, and we can only share stuff if we're in an IRB approved project and there's a project folder, and then you get added to that folder. But otherwise, you can't see anything. You're not connected to shared data. So I think this would be a good process. Yeah, this is incredibly helpful. I'll give it a 10 out of 10.
So
The
Andrew
way I'm
says,
doing it is definitely not a 10 out of 10. The way
ah,
I'm doing it is clearly not.
yeah,
Could be more efficient.
sure, sure. Anders mentions or to edit, so you don't have to set everything up. Yeah, you can. That with regard to using the import export wizard and dealing with integration services packages, yes, SSIS does suck because restarts are not realistically possible. That yeah. So if you get 90% of the way through and your package fails, you essentially have to restart. Especially if we're talking about the output of a SQL query. Now, if
Right.
we are talking about the output of a SQL query, in most cases, if you have a failure some of the way through, restarting is generally not a great option. You can do that as long as the application is still running and you have the data set in memory. But most of the time, when write fails, application crashes or you have a try catch block and it wraps up, it closes the database connection and says, I can't finish. So restarting is usually a challenge for most of these techniques unless you have some incremental update or incremental write capability, which in that case, you could still do that with integration services. I think it's just a systemic pain versus necessarily something that SSIS is particularly bad at.
Right.
Where SSIS is particularly bad is if any of the metadata changes, if any data types change, if anything in the underlying system changes. If you're writing to an Excel file and the Excel file structure changes because somebody opens it up and does something that they don't think should change the anything, like they change the column type of a column. Well, you're writing a new one, except that SSIS will say, "Oh, I have changed," and integration services says, I need new metadata," and will complain and will fail to run packages until you give it the new metadata. New metadata is so annoying in integration services. This is it's less bad than it was in the 2008 and 2008 R2 era. 2012 did improve metadata management where you could just reopen the package and if it was an easy fix, SSIS could do it itself without you having to delete a component and re-add a component and reconfigure the component or open up the component and make your go to the section and then hit OK. In a lot of these cases, you don't even have to make a change. It was just open up the component and then hit OK, and that would force a metadata refresh, and then suddenly everything's OK again. Primary key violations, yeah, I yes, yes. If you have some sort of key violation like that, but again, I don't know that that's a special sin of integration services versus something else. And when we're writing out to a file from a database, we're not going to have a primary key violation either way. It doesn't matter if they're, well, it does matter if they're duplicate rows, but it doesn't matter to the write process if there are duplicate rows. So I wouldn't anticipate getting any of those. Now, if you are writing into a SQL Server instance or into a database, a table in a database, then yeah, that is a new set of challenges with integration services. That is where you do have to check for data first and run other checks to see which records already exist and bulk insert the ones that don't and upsert the ones that do. And there's there were patterns around it because of just how much pain it was. And this is particularly like loading data warehouses. That was one of the major use cases for integration services. In that case, you have a lot of insert update operations that happen. And so there were patterns for it in SSIS. There was a component specifically for insert and update, but that component sucked. That component was awful, and there was a uh, open source variant. Actually, I don't think it was open source. It was a guy at Pragmatic Works had developed it. He made it available for free for a while, and then it became part of the Pragmatic Works kit for SSIS. And I have no idea what that is now because I haven't cared about SSIS since roughly the time that Microsoft stopped caring about SSIS. So um, they don't know if that's still around or still a thing. Um, But yeah, when it comes to just writing out flat files, it does the job reasonably well, like a bunch of other techniques. It's a little bit nicer in that, hey, I have a GUI versus I'm writing some R code or I'm writing some Python code and I'm instantiating a data frame, executing a query, and then storing the results in a Parquet file. There's a little bit of code there, but that also makes it easier for you to automate a process where give me a SQL query, a select statement, give me a select statement, and I can load that and then write out the results as a Parquet file, assuming that I don't blow out the memory of whatever machine is running this application. So, all right. I would probably look at Informatica if in need of serious ETL. It's been a while since I've heard Informatica come up as well.
Yeah. What are you talking about? I haven't heard that in forever.
Yeah. So maybe Ab Initio was better than both of them back in the day. But again, for most of this, patterns have changed. ETL is still a viable technique, but in many circumstances, ELT has just replaced it. And these tools were really ETL. They were more about the T than the E or the L. And later on, we've kind of learned, especially with regard to data warehouses, with data lakes, with data engineering projects, that we want many times we want dumb tools to do the EL. Just take this data from this system, write this data in this system, do it as fast as you can, and then I will transform it as I need to downstream. And so I think this is why tools like Informatica, like integration services, like Ab Initio, they're not that common, not nearly as common nowadays as they were a decade ago. And I think it's also why you haven't seen any sort of serious effort on integration services since SQL Server 2016. I'm being generous about 2016. Really, like I said, really it was 2012 that was the last edition that had practical improvements in integration services that I can remember. That's just because of what you work on. Maybe so, maybe so. But then you also talked about BCP, Anders. So let's be real here. All right. Speaking of being real, our other topic for the night. Our other topic for the night is the 2025 State of the Database Landscape. So this comes from Redgate. We talked about their 2024 edition last year, as I recall, and I am nothing if not consistent when it comes to lazy acquisition of other people's reports to riff and rant on. So, for that reason, we're going to talk about this for a little bit. So Redgate has the full report. It is available. You can download it yourself. I'm going to focus mostly on what they're talking about here. And actually, I can even lower the font size. Lower the font. Look at that. That's probably still readable for most people. It's readable for me, and I'm looking at this from a very tiny screen. So, highlights from the report: data security, database platforms, skills gaps, AI, and cloud. So let's scroll past all the blurs of text because text is boring. I want pictures. Approaches for sensitive data and testing. Apparently, more people are dealing with sensitive data in a real way than they were last year, or at least most people are pretending that they are. Uh, you know, well, I make no serious judgment about how much people are telling the truth in these surveys. So take that with however many grains of salt that you need. But we're noticing a lot more people saying we're masking or de-identifying sensitive data, which probably means that they took like the first and last letters and then put some asterisks in there, and you could still you could still re-identify if you knew what you were looking at. But uh, who am I here to judge? Synthetic data? No one's got time for that. Apparently, slightly more people have time for it in 2024 than they did in 2023. But this is synthetic data is probably your best bet. It is also the biggest challenge because you really have to get synthetic data that matches the distribution of your existing data. And no matter how good your synthetic data is, there will always be some oddball real life example that is worse. So, synthetic data, Anders, this is data that you generate yourself. You might have a list of first names, a list of last names, and you combine those together arbitrarily. You may have date of birth, and you just say pick a random date between this date and this date. You may have a telephone number, generate some arbitrary number. And so you're creating data that does not actually exist. You're using that, but it has the same scheme and patterns as your real data. Basically, you're generating dev data. You're making data that is real looking, that follows whatever structures and patterns of names or addresses or phone numbers or other attributes. You follow the appropriate data types. You follow general patterns on, if I had a regular expression to generate this field, what would that regular expression look like? And that's the idea. So yes, this is for non-production environments. So testing. A number of database platforms. Apparently, people are going back to one database platform and away from more than five. I guess 2023, people were like, let's get all the database platforms that we can, and realized in 2024, boy, that's a dumb decision. And so, uh, granted, this is not a longitudinal survey. So you're not asking the same companies, the same people year over year, which means this may have some effect from the sample that you pulled. But we do see a little bit of an increase in single database, in 2 to 3, in 4 to 5. 4 to 5 is probably close enough that I would say it's probably about the same year over year. But 2 to 3, big increase. More than 5, big decrease. I don't believe this graph at all. Yeah, this is why I'm hedging, honestly. There we go. So I'm hedging this specifically because I think that these are probably different samples of companies and people year over year. So it's not the same group of people. It's not saying that um, last year or 2023, a third of the companies we surveyed had more than 5 database platforms. And then a year later, we asked those same people and only 9%. Instead, there's some overlap in the respondents, but there's probably enough lack of overlap that it's not the same people. So um, take it with many grains of salt. Why do you not participate in professional development activities? Why? Basically, this question is, why are you not watching Shop Talk? Why are you, dear viewer, not watching Shop Talk? And the answer is, of course, you're watching Shop Talk, so you don't apply here. So, lack of time. I mean, it's only 1 hour a week. It's only 1 hour every 2 weeks. So, lack of financial support. I can't pay you money to watch Shop Talk. I don't get any money for this. I'm paying money for this. I got these lights. These bright lights cost more money than not bright lights. So, limited availability of relevant training. I mean, admittedly, we aren't very relevant. Mike's relevant. I'm not relevant. Lack of management support. I will call your manager and tell your manager to have you watch Shop Talk. Make it a quarterly goal that you have to watch Shop Talk 14 times. And the funny thing is, at most you're only going to have 12 episodes in the quarter. So who's not getting a bonus this time? It's what you get for not watching Shop Talk. Personal reasons. This is the 15% of people who personally hate me. And I'm actually surprised it's not larger. I hate my career was not an option. That might be other. That might also be personal reasons. I can see that being a personal reason as well. I hate my career. That's a very personal thing. The concerns about using AI. Let's see if it doesn't work well. Oh, accuracy and reliability. Okay. So 2023, 37% of people said accuracy and reliability. 2024, 57%. Basically, more people are using these tools and are saying the results are terrible. What the heck am I getting myself into? Data security and privacy. 41% knew about the Samsung issue in ChatGPT. This year, 2024, 61%. And that's even before we learned about, um, I'm now blanking on the absolute new hotness LLM that is out of China and DeepSeek. That's the one. How DeepSeek had a database that was open to the public and anybody could view, and it included all of the chat history and it included some details about users. So, you know, that happens. That happens for to the best of us. Training and expertise has gone up a little bit. Ethical concerns have gone up a bit. Regulatory compliance. Basically, all of these reasons have gone up, including none of the above. And if you do the math on this, you might ask yourself, wait, how is it that everybody's concerns went up and yet none of the above also went up? I'm assuming that there was a block of people who were, I don't know anything about AI, so why did you ask me this question? But it's a little weird. The results here are a little bit weird. All right. Why are you not managing your database in the cloud? It costs too much money. It's too slow. I need to have people to optimize resources because it costs too much money and it's too slow. Um, I hosted my data in an S3 bucket that I left public. Somebody at some agency told me I can't do this. I'm already on Oracle's cloud. If so, that'd be like 1/10 of 1%. Misaligned expectations between teams. The guy who sold us on this cloud database got taken to some neat golf trips, and those of us who are stuck using it never got to go on the golf trip. We didn't even get a nice lunch. They sent like Panera bread. They sent some bagels to our office one time, but they only sent half the bagels that there were developers. So only half of the developers got bagels, and freaking Ed took 2 bagels. So not everybody, not even half the people got a bagel because of Ed. They used AI to answer it. That's slightly as to why don't you trust AI? Slightly creepy, reasonably accurate. So yeah, this is the full report. You can get a copy of it. You can check your databases of interest. That will give you a free report, and you can check out the full length version of this. I am looking here. This was only just the highlights of the report, but it's nice to have this out every year and kind of get an idea of how things change on a year to year basis. So I'm going to stop sharing that. And again, the link is in chat in case you are interested in getting a copy of that report for your own edification. And with that, we actually have a few minutes. So I'm gonna have to vamp for several minutes as we wrap things up. The only thing that changes is more and more work. Yeah, you're not wrong, Anders. That is, I guess. Wait a minute, you would be wrong because that stays the same. So even that doesn't change. Uh, the rate of growth of work is static. I maybe the Yeah, first derivative could be static. Second derivative, I mean, I guess if the first is static, the second one has to be, except that we're thinking about a stochastic variable, so there can be fluctuations. So the second derivative will probably average out to about 0. And I've added 4 database engines in the last 3 months. Yes, but have you added DuckDB yet? I don't think you have, but I think you should. Speaking of DuckDB, I actually have a talk. I don't know if I should announce this yet, but who cares? We're rolling. Um, I will be at Richmond, SQL Saturday Richmond. So SQL Saturday Richmond is coming up. And actually, you know what? While we're here, let me show the SQL Saturday page because I did promote our SQL Saturday Raleigh, which again is coming up May 17th, Saturday, May 17th. It's funny how that works out date wise. Atlanta, March 8th. This is the AI and BI edition. Coming up really soon. I will be there. Joinville, I will not be there. But Richmond is April 5th. I will be there in Richmond, and I want to see if they've put the schedule up. So the schedule has not been announced yet, but I will be talking about DuckDB at SQL Saturday Richmond. And for high level, just basics, I vetoed Duck. Too many chances to spell it wrong in emails with management. I can I can understand that. I understand. So DuckDB, for those of you who are not familiar with it, is think of SQLite, in memory SQL database. You have a file, you read from the file, you operate in memory. It's a single machine, single person type of database that's reasonably good for simple work. You don't want to have anything major hosted on it, but if you're just loading some data and writing a query, like I have a CSV and I want to read that CSV and I want to understand what's in the data, it works reasonably well. If I have an application that needs a small database to store configurations, SQLite works fine. DuckDB is more of an analytical database. So it is single person analytical database. Works really well for columnar data. And generally speaking, if you're doing a lot of work like analyzing data files, analyzing Parquet files, for example, loading that data into DuckDB allows you to write SQL queries against it pretty effectively. I think it's going to be a little bit easier to work with than, say, loading into R data frames or Python data frames and operating with pandas or the tidyverse operations or data.table in R. And so it'll give you generally better performance for analytical operations. It'll let you write SQL statements, and it works pretty well. It's also free. Um, so yeah, that's my high level thoughts. I'm going to get into the detail a lot more later on. As far as the call for speakers, I believe it is closed for Richmond because they quietly were telling people, yeah, call for speakers is closed. So they were telling people, hey, this is the session that we've selected. Schedule's not been announced yet, so if anybody asks, I didn't say anything. But I will be there. And then Jacksonville is May 3rd. Hopefully, I'll be there. They have not announced their speakers yet, I don't think. Hopefully, I'll be there. New York City is May 10th. I will actually be there. I forget if they have announced. Yeah, they have not announced yet who what the schedule looks like, but I will be there. And Raleigh is May 17th, and I might be at Raleigh. We'll find out. Not that I applied to speak the last 2 times I did there. Yeah, I mean, just show up and be like, "Hey, hi, I'm Anders. Give me a session slot." And they're like, "Whoa, oh, Anders. Okay, well, go to this room." Really, it's just because they want to get away from Anders. But like, yeah, definitely, we'll send people your way. Don't worry about it. So that's what's going on over the next couple of months in the Southeast area, plus New York City. Austin is also May 3rd, but
Eric Darling's going to New York City.
Eric is. I think Eric is doing a pre-con there.
Yeah.
Let's find out.
I was watching one of his videos the other day.
I don't know. Pre-con session details. That's not Eric Darling. That's Andreas Voltaire. Okay, so Andreas is doing a pre-con there. So I guess Eric may not be doing a pre-con in New York City. Or if he is, maybe it's not up there yet. That is basically what happened in Oslo. I get it. You know what, Anders? You submitted a session, so we'll actually send people to your session. Otherwise, we would have sent you to, you have to go to the 4th floor, and you'll be sitting there on the roof. Like, why are people coming up to the roof? Yes, you get all the pigeons. You can actually count pigeons in your stats if you keep track of how many attendees you have for a session. Pigeons
No,
are
Pigeon DB is different. It's duck.
Ducks are also acceptable. Geese are not acceptable. If you try to put number of geese down in your count of attendees, you'll actually that doesn't count. So they'll hold that against you. Basically, ducks are okay, pigeons are fine, no geese. There will be farming simulator. We should get a giant screen. We should get the biggest television that we could rent or find, and just have farming simulator up all day, or American Truck Simulator. We'll have people driving.
There's one in the cafeteria that's absolutely gigantic.
Yeah,
It's
well,
like
so
four. It's like 4 or 5 of these things.
I think we know what we're doing. We're gonna have an entire session track that's dedicated to playing American Truck Simulator, and we're gonna have people drive across the country in their
I do
trucks.
have VR.
I can show off how I automate feeding 3,000 cows. I mean that right there. If that's not a session topic, I don't know what is. But with that, we are going to wrap things up for tonight. Little bit of hiccups in the post move, post reset up, post new organization. You probably saw a new camera. Everything's all nice and bright and shiny, and everything's looking good. And got a couple of hiccups. We're gonna sort those out. We'll get chat back up on the screen soon. But with that, I am gonna wrap things up for tonight. So on behalf of Mike Christensen, I've been me. This is Shop Talk. Until we see each other, hopefully tomorrow, because remember our advanced our data science and AI and BI and many eyes meetup, that is tomorrow. So come check that out. Nonetheless, until we do see each other in a future edition of whatever, take care.